My name is Darlene Whitlock, and this past Christmas something strange happened. I wasn't invited. Not by mistake. Not because of a miscommunication or some last-minute travel chaos. No, I was deliberately left out, forgotten if you want to be polite about it. Erased if you want the truth. And if you've ever spent decades holding a family together only to realize you weren't even worth a chair at the table anymore, you might actually regret skipping this part. So before you sit down and listen, please take a moment to like the video and subscribe to Grace's Truth channel. Now, let's listen to this story with Grace's Truth. It started small. A week before Christmas, I texted my daughter Trish. Nothing dramatic. Just, let me know what time you want me to come over. We'd always had dinner at my place, but ever since she and Kevin bought their home 3 years ago, she insisted on hosting. I didn't mind. The torch was supposed to be passed down right. 2 days passed. No reply. I texted again. Should I bring the pie or the wine? Silence. By the fourth day, I started to feel it. Not just concern, but something else. A kind of pressure behind my ribs. I had seen Trish online posting pictures of ornaments of her boys in their matching pajamas. She wasn't sick. She wasn't out of town. She was busy celebrating without me. On Christmas Eve, I still told myself there had been a mix-up. That she'd call and say, "Oh, Mom, didn't you get the invite?" That I'd laugh it off and bring the damn pie anyway. But Christmas morning came and went. No call, no message. Just a single notification. Trish had posted a photo. The dining table lit beautifully, every seat filled. Except mine. I made dinner anyway. Not because I was hopeful. Not because I thought someone might show up late with a bottle of wine and an apology. I made it because habit is a hard thing to kill. I roasted the Cornish hen too small for a gathering too large for one, and made the same cranberry chutney Trish used to sneak spoonfuls of as a child. The smell of rosemary filled the kitchen. The gravy thickened just right. The wine was a Pinot Noir I'd been saving for a special occasion, and apparently this counted now. I set the table for one. Carefully, silverware-aligned napkin folded in the shape of a fan, just like I used to do when they were little, and thought it was magic. I stared at that single plate and felt the weight of 37 Christmases collapse into it. There had been Christmases when we were broke, paper garlands, canned ham, dollar store, tinsel, and there were years of abundance, prime rib crystal glasses, 4-layer cakes. No matter the budget, I had always made it magical. Not because I was trying to impress anyone, but because that's what love looked like for me. Effort, preparation, intention. I even used to handwrite place cards with each person's favorite quote on the back. I remembered Trish's, "Blessed are the flexible, for they shall not be bent out of shape." She laughed when she saw it. She was 14. Now she was 42. And she didn't even think I deserved a seat. I sat quietly and tried to eat. 2 bites in, I stopped. Not out of emotion, out of clarity. Because that's when I knew this wasn't a mistake. It wasn't forgetfulness. It was a choice. And I would make one too. I didn't sleep much that night. I lay on the couch, wrapped in my mother's old quilt, staring at the ceiling while the lights on the tree blinked in slow, rhythmic indifference. I kept wondering, did I do something? Did I say too much? Not say enough? But nothing came to mind. No fight. No falling out. Just silence. The next morning, I got my answer, though, not in the way I expected. I opened Facebook. It was instinct, not curiosity. I wasn't looking to feel worse. I just wanted to see Mason and Kyle in their Christmas pajamas. Maybe a family photo I could save in spite of it all. But instead I found something else. A video. Posted by Trish's friend. It showed their dining table pan across the room. Everyone smiling, clinking glasses. And there it was. My chair. The one I always sat in. My place card was gone. The plate where my napkin would be was filled with dinner rolls. No one asked, "Where's Darlene?" No one even paused. In the background, I saw a gift wrapped in silver paper with a tag. It was mine. I recognized my own handwriting from years ago. The boys had always kept one of my gifts from Santa under the tree for fun. But this one just sat there, unopened, forgotten. I stared at the screen for a long time. They had taken me out of the frame so smoothly, so cleanly, that it looked like I had never been part of it. And in that moment, I stopped feeling sad. I felt something colder, sharper, like standing outside in a thin coat while the snow soaks through. That's when I remembered. I still had the deed, not just to my own home but to theirs. And they had just forgotten something far more important than an invitation. They'd forgotten who still held the keys to their Christmas miracle. By the time the leftover cranberry chutney had gone cold in the fridge, I'd already decided what I was going to do. Not impulsively, not in rage, just quietly. Because when people think you're soft, they never see it coming when you act with precision. I went into the hall closet and pulled down the red file box labeled Trish Mortgage. It hadn't been touched in over 3 years. The papers were still crisp, the ink still fresh. And right there in the center of it all was the signature. Mine. I had co-signed for their home. Back when Kevin's credit score was barely enough to qualify for a cell phone plan, and Trish had just come out of maternity leave, they'd asked for help. Not just with a down payment, but with getting approved. The lender insisted someone with stronger financials sign alongside them. That someone had been me. And like a fool, like a mother, I said yes. I remembered the day clearly. The realtor smiling too wide the champagne in paper cups. Trish hugging me with tears in her eyes. She promised they'd refinance in a year and remove me from the loan. They never did. At the time, I didn't push it. It was just paperwork, I told myself. I trusted them. But now that trust sat on my kitchen table in a red file reminding me. They hadn't just forgotten me at Christmas. They'd forgotten everything I'd done to keep their lives stable. And what they didn't realize was that as long as my name was on that mortgage, I had legal power. Control. So I logged into the loan servicer portal. I still had access. I had the authority to make decisions on the account pause payments and even request a hardship review. I didn't have to ask their permission. I just had to click. And suddenly my silence wasn't just emotional, it was financial. You'd be surprised how easy it is to disrupt someone's life without lifting a finger, without breaking a law, especially when you helped build that life. I stared at the loan portal for a full 10 minutes, fingers hovering above the mouse. The pause. Payment option blinked softly on the screen like it was waiting for me to blink first. But I didn't. I clicked. And just like that, their mortgage was in limbo. To be clear, I didn't cancel it. I didn't destroy their credit or push for foreclosure yet. I simply activated the financial hardship hold on the loan. It was a button I'd helped dozens of families use back when I worked at the credit union. It buys time, freezes auto payments, and places the loan under review. But when the primary borrower doesn't know it's happening, it looks like a system failure, or worse, a missed payment. I sat back and let the mechanism begin. Meanwhile, I made tea and pulled out my old ledger books, the ones I'd used to teach Trish how to balance a checkbook when she was 12. Back when she actually listened, I began documenting everything. Screenshots of the loan portal dates of our last communication, photos of the unopened Christmas gift still under my tree. Not because I needed evidence now, but because people like Trish love rewriting history when they realize they've gone too far. I'd keep the receipts, let her keep the silence. 3 days passed before I heard anything. Then came the first ping, a voicemail from Kevin. "Hey, Darlene, we just got an alert from the bank. Something's wrong with the mortgage account. Are you seeing anything on your end?" I didn't respond. Another day passed. Then Trish called. No apology, just panic. "Mom, why is the payment paused? Did you do something?" I didn't pick up, because now she'd remembered I existed. And I wasn't done reminding her. The silence didn't last long. By day 5, the mask started to slip. Trish called again this time, her voice sharp, the panic now souring into something nastier. "Mom, we need to talk. This is serious. We're getting emails from the bank. Kevin says the loan's in review. Why would you even touch it?" I didn't answer, not out of cruelty, but because I had nothing more to say than what the documents would soon spell out for her. She was learning what I'd always known, that when you erase someone long enough, you start forgetting they can write things back in ink. The hardship hold triggered a 30-day review, during which the loan couldn't be paid, but also couldn't go ignored. It stalled everything. Their escrow account was suspended. The autopay bounced back. The bank sent a notice. Primary cosigner has initiated financial review. Payments paused. Do not attempt modification without all signatures. Trish hadn't looked at a mortgage document in years. She didn't even remember I had that kind of access. But I did, because I was the one who saved them from drowning when they were 35, with 2 kids, and a dream house just slightly out of reach. I read through the contract again, every clause highlighted from years ago, and there it was, page 5. Co-signer reserves the right to initiate hardship review, refinance, refusal, or payment delay without primary borrower consent pending mutual liability status. In short, I could pull the brake without asking, and they were now passengers in a car they thought they owned. Melinda, my lawyer friend and former credit union colleague, reviewed the documents with me over tea that Friday. She chuckled as she slid the papers back into their folder. Classic clause. Buried in fine print no one ever reads. Trish clearly hadn't. Because if she had, she would have realized that forgetting to invite me wasn't just bad manners. It was a tactical error. Trish had always been the type to claim she was independent while standing on someone else's ladder. At 16, it was my gas card. At 22, my spare apartment when she dropped out of college. At 30, it was her dream wedding, 80 guests she couldn't afford until I gifted the photographer and the cake. She'd always told herself she was self-made, all while accepting help so seamlessly she no longer recognized it as help. But this mortgage, this was the biggest favor of them all. And it was the one she had conveniently rewritten in her mind as a closed chapter. As if the contract had vanished the moment they got their new granite countertops. I knew the call was coming. It came at 6:43 p. On a Thursday, I didn't answer. She followed it up with a text. We're getting notices now. Legal ones. If you're mad about Christmas, just say so. But this is crossing the line. That last sentence made me laugh. Crossing the line. As if forgetting the woman who'd given her a financial future on Christmas Day wasn't the very definition of crossing it. I decided it was time to open another file, the email archive. There it was. The correspondence from 2019 when the loan was finalized. Trish had written, "We'll refinance in 12 months like we promised. Thanks for helping us get the keys, Mom. You're saving our lives." 4 years later, no refinance. No follow-up. Not even a, "Do you want to be taken off this?" I saved that email as a PDF and sent it to Melinda. "Document it," I wrote, because now it was more than forgotten invitations and hurt feelings. It was a contract being stretched too far. And paper, I've learned, may burn, but not before it becomes evidence. The default notice landed on their doorstep January 10th. Technically, it wasn't a formal foreclosure threat yet. Just a firm nudge from the lender. Your loan is currently in review. A lack of action may result in accelerated procedures. But to someone like Trish, who barely reads the fine print on her grocery receipts, it might as well have been an eviction notice. And that's exactly how I intended it to feel. Melinda sent me a copy. I held the paper like a relic. It was printed on standard stock impersonal Coldy. But to me it was sacred. A receipt for the years I'd spent showing up only to be dismissed the one year it mattered most. Trish texted again. "We need to fix this. Now." I still didn't respond. That weekend, Kevin called from a different number. I let it ring. Then curiosity got the best of me and I played the voicemail. "Darlene, I don't know what's happening, but the kids are scared. We told them there was a glitch with the bank. Please, can we talk? The kids are scared." Funny how they remember I'm family when the lights start flickering. But I wasn't doing this to punish Mason and Kyle. I knew what panic in a child's eyes looked like. I had raised 2 of my own through recessions, layoffs, and lean Christmases with no one to lean on. That's why I did something next that might surprise you. I made a call to the lender. I didn't undo the pause. I didn't restore their access. But I did something subtle. I shifted the review into a low priority flag. It meant they'd get more notices, more confusion. But not default. Not yet. Because I wanted them to sit in the uncertainty, not to destroy them, just to show them what it feels like to be discarded, erased, powerless. It wasn't revenge. It was education. And I was the teacher they'd forgotten. You'd be amazed how fast a house of cards collapses when just one beam is pulled. By mid-January, Trish and Kevin had called, texted, emailed, and even written a handwritten letter left in my mailbox like a child sliding a note under a locked door. Each message more frantic than the last. and still none of them said what mattered. No apology, no admission, no recognition of what they had done. Only fear, only inconvenience. It wasn't, "We're sorry we forgot you on Christmas." It was, "Fix this, so our life can go back to normal." But normal had left the building. Just like I had. Melinda and I reviewed the paperwork again. She was meticulous, highlighting every clause, every signature. We were nearing the 30-day mark. That meant the review hold would lift soon, and one of two things would happen. Either they'd refinance and remove me, or the loan would escalate. Neither option worked in their favor. And that's when I did something I hadn't done in years. I invited them over, not for dinner, not for reconciliation, for truth. I sent a typed letter, formal, short. "I am available at my home this Saturday at 4. Strontherapi. To discuss our shared financial interests. This is not a personal invitation, it's a legal one." Melinda called it poetic litigation. I just called it boundaries. They arrived 5 minutes early. Trish wore her guilt like perfume, too heavy, too late. Kevin wouldn't make eye contact. I let them into the living room where the fireplace glowed, but the air felt colder than ever. I didn't offer coffee. I didn't ask about the kids. I laid the folder on the table. "This," I said softly, "is the mortgage contract. These are the clauses you didn't read. And these," I tapped the notice, "are the consequences of forgetting who helped you." Trish opened her mouth, but this time I didn't let her speak, because I had waited long enough to be heard. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't have to. Sometimes the most powerful thing a woman can do is speak plainly without apology, without softness, without making herself smaller to make others more comfortable. I pointed to the contract. "You co-signed this house with me. You never refinanced. You never even checked if I wanted out." Trish squirmed. Kevin stayed silent. I flipped to the highlighted clause about payment authority. "You forgot I had control. Until I reminded you." Trish finally spoke. Her voice cracked not with sorrow, but with embarrassment. "We didn't mean to exclude you." I didn't answer. Because "didn't mean to" doesn't reverse choices. It doesn't unerase someone from a table. It doesn't pull a gift out from under a tree and place it into your hands. It just explains away guilt. I leaned back and let the silence press down. I wanted them to feel it, the discomfort of being in a room where the power had shifted so completely the air itself seemed to hum with it. Kevin cleared his throat. "So, what happens now?" I slid a piece of paper across the table. It was a formal offer. Melinda had drafted it. They could either refinance the loan within 60 days and remove me from all liability. B. Sell the house and split the equity with my portion going into a trust for Mason and Kyle. Or C. Do nothing and let the bank escalate the loan into collections under joint responsibility. I made no threats. I just pointed to the signature line. "This is your choice," I said. The same way not inviting me was. Trish looked down. Kevin looked defeated. They didn't sign yet. They said they needed time. But as they walked out, I saw something in Trish's eyes. Not regret. Recognition. She had finally remembered who gave her everything, and who could take it back. They didn't call the next day, or the one after that, and I didn't reach out either. That's the thing about lines: you draw one, and then you wait to see if they'll cross it with humility or retreat with pride. By day 4, I received a call not from Trish or Kevin, but from their lender. A refinance application had been initiated, but something had gone wrong. Trish's debt-to-income ratio had ballooned. Kevin's credit had dropped from a recent missed payment. They were no longer eligible to refinance on their own. I listened as the loan officer explained their unexpected difficulties securing terms. I thanked her for the call. Then I asked one question. "Do they still need my signature to proceed?" "Yes, ma'am," she replied. "You're still a co-signer until the loan is refinanced or repaid." I hung up and exhaled slowly. It was done. Not in the explosive, tear-filled way I imagined, but in the quiet, administrative fashion I had lived most of my life. A line of ink, a checkbox, a frozen account. I hadn't screamed. I hadn't slammed a door. I had simply returned the favor of forgetting. That weekend, a new letter arrived at my door. This time handwritten by Trish. It was short. Not quite an apology, but not a denial either. Just 4 lines. "We didn't think it would hurt you. We thought you wouldn't notice. I guess we were wrong. Tell the boys Merry Christmas if you can. I folded it, placed it in the same red file folder as everything else, and wrote one note at the top. See? They always remember after the lights go out. Then I made dinner. Just for me. Roasted root vegetables, a baked fish fillet, and that same cranberry chutney from Christmas Day. It tasted better somehow, because now I wasn't waiting for a seat. I had claimed the whole table. Something strange happens when people realize they no longer have control over you. They start rewriting the story. I heard through a mutual friend, Brenda, from church, that Trish had been telling others I'd gotten confused, that the mortgage pause was a mistake, and that we were working things out privately. She made it sound like I had drifted into old age like fog over a quiet pond. Delicate, unreliable. The implication was subtle but sharp. Darlene's losing her grip. Be kind. Be patient. I wasn't offended. I was amused. Because it wasn't confusion that had signed the loan agreement. It wasn't memory loss that downloaded her 2019 email promising to refinance. It was clarity. Ruthless paper trail clarity. I didn't correct Brenda. I didn't go online to defend myself. I simply forwarded the refinance rejection notice to Melinda and asked her to draft a new letter. This one wasn't an ultimatum. It was a resignation. I would no longer support the mortgage. I would be initiating my formal withdrawal as a financial party of interest based on breach of verbal and ethical contract. I would also be selling my 1/3 equity back into the loan via trust. No cash out, just protection for Mason and Kyle. Melinda titled it Letter of Retired Obligation. I titled it Closure. We mailed it certified. 3 days later, Trish showed up, unannounced. She stood on my porch with her coat half-zipped and tears already sliding down her cheeks. I messed up, she said. I know I did. I opened the door just enough for the cold air to enter. But I didn't let her in. I didn't yell. I didn't comfort her. I just said, "You had a seat. You gave it away." And then I closed the door. Not in anger, in peace. Because forgiveness doesn't always mean reunion. Sometimes it just means you don't get to rewrite the ending. I didn't tell anyone what happened at the door. Not Melinda. Not Brenda. Not even my own reflection in the mirror that night as I brushed my hair in silence. Some things are better left as private punctuation marks moments you don't narrate or justify. You just feel them, breathe through them, and let them settle into the soft places that were once bruised. The next morning, I walked through the house and saw it for what it had become. Peaceful, uncluttered mine. The walls no longer echoed with waiting. The floors no longer remembered footsteps that didn't come. I brewed coffee and sat at the kitchen table with a notepad. And I wrote a letter not to Trish, but to Mason and Kyle. It wasn't long. Just a note explaining that Grandma loved them even when she had to do hard things. That sometimes love means telling the truth louder than comfort allows. That they were never the reason this happened. But they were part of the reason I kept going. I didn't mail it. I placed it inside a sealed envelope labeled, "For when they ask." Because they would ask. Eventually. Children always do. Especially the ones who grow up hearing only one side of a story. That night, I opened a new bottle of wine and prepared a different kind of meal. Not one for survival or sadness. One for celebration. I made baked brie grilled vegetables and even pulled out the lemon tart recipe I hadn't used since my husband passed. And then I set the table for one. But this time I lit 2 candles. Not for guests. For memory. One for the woman I used to be, always waiting, always hoping. And one for the woman I became, silent, strategic, and finally seen. It's funny how peace doesn't announce itself. It doesn't knock or burst through the door with music swelling in the background. It arrives like the smell of bread in a quiet kitchen, like sunlight creeping across the floorboards after a long rain. And that's how it found me. Not in triumph, but in the stillness I'd built for myself. The bank finalized the refinance terms 2 weeks later. Not with Trish and Kevin as primary borrowers, they couldn't qualify. But with the help of a private lending group they'd scraped together, likely from friends' favors or someone else's kindness, I was officially removed from the mortgage. Melinda sent me the paperwork with a single post-it that said, "It's done! You're free." And I printed one extra copy for myself and placed it in the red file folder. Then I picked up that folder, thicker now fuller, and walked it to the fireplace. I opened it page by page and fed each one to the flames. The notarized letters, the refinance offer, the printed screenshots, even Trish's last note. All of it. Gone. Because I didn't need evidence anymore. The lesson had already been delivered, and I was no longer carrying the weight of being forgotten. That weekend, I visited an open house, not to buy, just to feel the space. It was small, clean, quiet. The kind of place a woman like me might move into one day if she ever wanted less house and more sky. The realtor asked if I was downsizing. No, I said. Just finally choosing. And that was the truth. Because for the first time in decades, I wasn't making space for people who didn't make space for me. I wasn't carving out chairs. I was sitting at my own table in the center of a life I built and reclaimed with grace. I moved into the cottage 2 months later. It wasn't grand. Just a 2-bedroom place tucked on the edge of a small hill with creaky wood floors and a stubborn door that needed a good hip nudge to close. But it was mine, not co-signed, not entangled, not borrowed or shared. Mine. I painted the walls sage green. I hung old family photos not out of nostalgia, but because I'd earned the right to own my story without bitterness. I even hung one of Trish as a little girl wearing her paper angel wings from the 2nd grade nativity play. Her face still made me smile even if her silence didn't. I kept the tree small that Christmas. 4 feet tall, white lights, no ornaments. Just one ribbon that said, "Welcome home." No one came over. No one was invited. But I didn't feel alone, because somewhere in the stillness I had found my name again. Not as mom or grandma or co-signer, just Darlene. A woman who once gave everything until there was nothing left, and then gave herself back what she needed most: boundaries, clarity, and the right to choose who sits at her table. A week before the new year, I got a letter in the mail. It was from Mason. Just 4 words written in messy penmanship only an 11-year-old could manage. "Grandma, are you okay?" I smiled. And I wrote back. Just 4 words. "I finally am now." Some betrayals come like storms, loud, sudden, violent. Others come like a snowless Christmas morning, quiet, cold, and full of what's missing. Darlene Whitlock wasn't forgotten because she was unlovable. She was forgotten because she had made herself indispensable for too long, until her absence became unthinkable, until they chose to stop thinking of her at all. But what her family didn't realize is that silence, when placed in the hands of a woman who understands money memory and legal fine print, is not weakness. It's power. And she used it, quietly. She didn't yell. She didn't threaten. She didn't show up uninvited with casseroles and apologies. She froze the mortgage. She reminded them whose signature built the foundation beneath their feet. And she made them remember her, not with guilt, but with consequence. But this isn't a story of revenge. It's a story of restoration, of a woman who set the table for herself after being erased from it, of a mother who learned that forgiveness doesn't always come with reunions, and love sometimes lives in distance. Now, in her own cottage, with a tree lit just for her and a letter from a grandson who still remembers how she used to hum while slicing cranberries, Darlene isn't angry. She's free. Because sometimes, the greatest gift you can give yourself isn't justice. It's choosing not to wait for permission to feel whole. And Darlene, she's whole again.